Welcome back to part 3 of our series on your first analytics data engineering project. In part 3, we're going to do data ingestion. Let's do this. So data ingestion, or integration as it's otherwise known, is simply the process of putting disparate data sources into one unified data store. One way of doing this is to first of all gather all your data sources and load them into your data lake. Another option that we're going to take is to load that data directly into your data warehouse, skipping the lake. This will just speed up and simplify our lifecycle for getting data to our consumers. We're going to be using Fivetran as the tool to move our data from our source application systems, so our HubSpot. We're going to grab the data that we previously put in part 2 and move that into our data warehouse, which we're going to go talk more about in part 4, but we will set up the data warehouse in this episode. With Fivetran, all we need to do is we need to let it know how to connect to our applications, being HubSpot and Trello in our case, and then how to connect to the destination, which will be Snowflake. We'll also configure Fivetran Scheduler, figure out what latency we'd like to collect data from those applications and load into the warehouse. As you can see, Fivetran has absolutely hundreds of different connectors which you can pull data from. If I just jump into the See All Connectors, there's around about 180 different connectors as of March 2022. Let's just make sure that our connectors that we need are here. So we've got HubSpot, perfect, that's good. To set up an account, simply sign up. I've already signed up. You get a 14-day trial. I'll just log in. And when you first log in or sign up, it'll be the first screen that you're presented with. You need to set up your connectors. We're going to be setting up HubSpot, which Fivetran is then going to use to send data to our destination. So let's find our data store. So it'll be a similar process again, where we're going to select our connector. We're going to say how we want to connect. So we're getting told that Fivetran would like to connect to HubSpot, and you need to first of all choose an account. And then it'll just list out all of the requests for granting permission between Fivetran and HubSpot. So we're just going to accept all this. Now I'm over in Australia, so I'm going to choose Australia and I'll choose AWS. You can choose any of these cloud providers for where you'd like to host your Fivetran account. And then we'll click Save and Test. Okay, so we can connect between HubSpot and Fivetran. Let's now set up our connection for the warehouse. Our target destination will be Snowflake. Let's continue setup. Now we're going to go set up our Snowflake account, but there's some really good instructions here on setting up your connection to Snowflake on the right here from Fivetran. We're actually going to use some SQL that Fivetran has already generated for us to create our warehouse and destination within Snowflake. So we'll just copy that. So down in step 2, there is this big statement which creates the warehouse, creates some roles for Fivetran to use, and so forth. And we'll run this in a second. Copy it. So before we can connect to Snowflake, we need to actually set up an account with Snowflake. So head on over to snowflake.com. And click Start for Free. This will give you a month's worth of Snowflake credit. It'll actually give you $400 worth of credit, but that'll expire after about a month. And for all the stuff we need to do, would be well under that 400 credit limit. Once you've logged into Snowflake, you'll actually see any databases here for the first time. I've just got some from prior projects. But what we can do is we can now paste that SQL code that we got from our Fivetran instructions, and we can just select all of it, Control A, and click Run. And so 20 queries were just executed And what you'll notice is that we've also just had a new database built. So this Fivetran database has just been built for us. If I open up our history, we'll see that 20 different queries were just run. And we can go back through each one of these, but what they're doing is they're just executing these various pieces of SQL here to create a new role for Fivetran and set its password and give it the right permissions and so forth. It's also created us a warehouse. And yeah, more and more stuff to do with access. So we've got our database, we've got our destination for Fivetran. So let's head back now into Fivetran. So we've run this script. Oh yes, and don't forget you should really be changing this password, but for now I'll just leave it as that. Okay, so step 3 is perhaps the most complicated part. This could definitely be improved on Fivetran's part. But what we need to do now is configure Snowflake's network policy. So we don't actually have a network policy just yet. We have to create one. And they give you an example here. Now this example applies to if your account was in the States, but personally for me, I chose mine to be in Australia. So I'm going to have to alter this statement a little bit. So I'm just going to go into my Snowflake account again. And in the Run tab, I'm going to just change this. This is the name. You can name this whatever. This is actually the name field of the network policy itself. So I'll just call it Oz. Now, these IP addresses are what we need to whitelist for Fivetran to connect to Snowflake. Right now, the default IP addresses listed there are the United States version. So if I just go back into the Fivetran instructions, above where it says alter network policy, there is a list of IP addresses here. And I can just find the ones for Australia. So this is the US region. So depending on where you selected, where your Fivetran instance should be hosted, you'll need to grab these IP addresses. So if you did it for Google Cloud or if you did it for AWS, you'll have to go grab these ones. So for me, I'm over in Australia, so I'm just going to grab the decider, everything apart from anything after the slash. So I'll just grab that. There's only one for me. Just jump back into here and just enter that in and run by clicking this. Also, before I run this, I know I need to make sure I'm in a role that has access to do this. So I think only a account admin can do this. So I'll just run this as an account admin. Click run. There we go. So our network policy Fivetran IP whitelist Oz has been created. Now let's go back over into Fivetran and finish off those steps. Cool. You can actually scroll down through the rest of the instructions. There's lots of optional steps, which we're going to skip over. Step 4, 5. Don't need that. Don't need any of that. And now on step 6, there is just you just need to log back into Fivetran, which we already currently are. And we've already gone to the Fivetran destinations page, and we've added Snowflake already, and we're already at step 7. So we need to enter our host name, fill out this form. So the host we can grab from our other window, the Snowflake. So we'll go and grab everything from snowflakecomputing.com to the left. So don't include the HTTPS, but just include your account. It should look like some sort of combination of letters and numbers all the way to the .com. And that is your host. Leave the port as 443. So we named our user Fivetran user. The database was called Fivetran database that we created before. So let's just update that. And then for authentication, we chose password. Enter the password which you changed previously when we were creating the database in Snowflake. And just make sure you choose the correct cloud provider. And then you can just choose your time zone as well. And then save and test. Brilliant. So we've now set up our connection between Snowflake and Fivetran. Let's now finish our integration by moving data from HubSpot into Snowflake and set up a schedule for that data so that whenever our operations teams are updating deals, contacts, and companies and tickets, that they flow straight into our data warehouse. Keep this really easy. We're just loading all the data that HubSpot has. Be a lot more specific and choose only tables that are relevant to you, but we won't go through that now. We'll just load everything in. So back onto the status page. Now we've connected, we can just complete our first initial sync. And what that's going to do is it's going to do that first initial load. Now we can set up, whilst we wait for the initial run to start up, how often we'd like data to be pulled from HubSpot. So by default, HubSpot connection has a 6-hour frequency in terms of how often data will get refreshed. We can turn that down and get data latency down to every 5 minutes if we'd like. I'm just going to keep it an hour for this tutorial. And let's just check on how our status for our initial load is going. I can see that this bar chart down here, it's starting. It's been running for 3 minutes. So I know this takes a bit of time. I'll come back in a second. So now our data has been loaded. I've actually done 2 loads because one was shortly after the hour mark. And each of those runs took around about 20 minutes or so. And I've had a quick debug going through the logs. And in short, it's going to every single one of the APIs HubSpot has. And we could make this so much faster instead of going to all 65 tables, which we don't need to go and query. If we just selected our 4 tables that we actually populated, this would be a fraction of the time. But just for information, that's what's going on behind the scenes. As an example, this API call here is going to HubSpot's marketing emails, and yeah, we never set up any marketing emails or anything like that. So that's one way to improve your speed there, is to not request every single possible table that's available. So let's have a look. So we should hopefully see if we go into our Fivetran database. We may just need to refresh this. You can now see HubSpot coming up as a schema. And if I open that up, it's built all of these tables. And like we say, we don't need the majority of these tables. We're just really interested in company, deal, contact, and ticket. Let's see if we can see those 2 deals that we entered in during the creation of our HubSpot account. So I'll just do it. Starter. Okay, brilliant. So we've got data now. We can see our deals. We'll have tickets as well as companies and contacts as well, all associated with this deal. In the next episode, we're going to do some very simple modeling, do some simple calculations and metrics on top of this data in our warehouse so that it's then available for our consuming applications to use.